Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Allison, and today with me I have Tony and Joaquin Gonzalez from Tire Group International. And thank you guys so much for being here today. So, we hear your family has a long history in the tire industry. How did that begin?
Well, our history goes back to 1942 in Cuba, where our family got involved during World War II, and basically the the salvage of tires, because there were no tires on the island. Everything was going towards the war effort. And what a lot of people don't know is that Cuba at the time had three tire plants. It had Goodyear, had BF Goodrich, and Firestone. So there was plenty of production that was going towards the war effort, but our family got involved as a repair shop, basically for tires, digging up tires that had been long ago put in landfills, if you want to call them that, back in those days. But yeah, and they would repair and revulcanize, and eventually, once the war was over in 1945, 1946, since they were in the same town as the Goodyear factory, they became Goodyear distributors and grew by the mid 1950s. They were the second largest Goodyear distributor on the island. So that's how our family kind of got into the business and how my father grew up in the business back in those days.
That's awesome. That's amazing to hear. So, after leaving Cuba, how did your father get involved in the tire industry in the US?
Well, my dad, immediately upon arriving from Cuba, really couldn't find any work down here in Florida, in Miami specifically. This wasn't much of a city as it is today, right? So he went up and went up to New York, where there were some family friends that took him in and gave him a place to live while he got on his feet. Eventually, ended up getting a job at General Motors in North Tarrytown, New York, which at the time was General Motors' largest plant, and obviously got the job in the tire division, mounting tires on cars and mounting tires on rims, et cetera, et cetera. Eventually, after that, I believe it was 1965 or so, he ended up being recruited by Firestone and took a job at Firestone's retread plant, also in upstate New York. And by 1967, 1968, right around the time I was born, my father gets offered a position in management to manage one of Firestone's stores here in Hialeah, Florida. And that's what brought my father to Florida at that point in time. And he managed a store that was basically failing at the time and turned it around, made it profitable. And within 2 or 3 years of that, my father started his own wholesale business. Actually, started his own retail business under the under the name Banner Tire of 36th Street, which was associated with Banner Tire out of St. Louis. Banner Tire was the owner of, I believe, the Delta brand at the time, which ended up becoming Delnat at some point in the future. And that's kind of how my father got involved in owning his own business, which then grew into a wholesale business. By the mid 1970s, it had become a company called TCM International, and the tire retail stores, which at the time I think were up to 11 in South Florida, were under the banner TCM Tire Centers. So we had the retail, and then we had the wholesale, and also by that time he was doing some exporting to the Caribbean and in South America.
Oh, that's amazing. What a great story. And you two grew up in the tire business, so tell us about that experience.
It was pretty interesting. I mean, obviously Tony's a little bit older than I, as you can see by the beard and the white hair, but uh um I remember as a child, like, literally playing with tires in my backyard, just because my dad, sometimes would buy like these big lots of tires, couldn't keep them in the warehouse, and he would bring, work home with him. So I remember as a kid kind of rolling around tires in our backyard, stacking them up and using them kind of, to play basketball. But uh, our father really instilled in us a tremendous work ethic, which I value now, being a father as well, and trying to pass that on, because at a young age, and we were all always big kids, but Tony got it first as he was older. which he would always go to work. And, the one thing that resonated with us was by that time, my dad was the owner of the company. And, he would stroll in like around 9:30 a.m. But we were required to be there at 8 o'clock in the morning. And that meant, we needed to catch a ride because we weren't driving at that time. And it was those little things that he instilled in us that kind of laid the foundation for who we are today. But one of the biggest benefits I would tell you was doing every facet of this business, from, loading containers, or working in retail stores, dealing with customers, processing, credits, invoicing, you name it. Both of us and my sister as well did every single facet and helped out as much as we could in the summers and any break that we had from school. So for that, I'm eternally grateful. I think that's really set a great foundation for, who we are as people today.
Yeah, Joaquin said it well. There was no summer vacation. I mean, school was over on Friday, and on Monday, we were at the warehouse or we were at a store. By the time I was 13, I was actually covering for managers during the summer when they would go on vacation, and I was in charge of the store. And we had 11 stores, so I'd spend a week in one store, a week in another, a week in another, or 10 days, whatever that manager got in terms of vacation. So it was not fun at the time, like Joaquin said, because you obviously at that age you want to be with your friends and going here and going there, and just being kids. But we were taught from a very young age what it took to make it in this country, and to work, and to grow your family, and be responsible.
Yeah, that's incredible. That sounds like a amazing and well worth start. So that is awesome to hear. And Joaquin, I hear you took a break from tires to pursue a career as an athlete. So what was that like?
Yeah, growing up in Miami, the University of Miami is, a big brand down here. And I remember going to all those games. So I always had this dream that I would love to kind of run out of the smoke in the Orange Bowl, in the old Orange Bowl. And that was kind of like this far-fetched goal that I had. And I got into high school, ended up sprouting out to be as tall as I am now. I'm 6'6". And, that dream became closer and closer to reality as, I started getting further involved with football and ended up going to play football at the University of Miami. Ended up starting 49 straight games there, and won a national championship my last year. Received countless accolades, and really never set out to really do that just for the accolades. I was just enamored with the school, enamored with my lofty goal as a kid, and I was actually living it. And then I had the opportunity to get drafted by the Cleveland Browns, and I played 4 years in the NFL with the Browns and the Colts. And um, I was smart enough to understand that football was going to have a finite timeline in my life. So when I went to University of Miami, I took advantage of my scholarship and got my, not only my undergrad, but I got my master's degree in marketing. And I always knew that I would come back and work for the family business. Even in my summers, even while playing in the NFL in college, I would always come back and stay very in tune. My brother and I have always been very close, so even throughout everything, we would kind of, just talk about things that were going on. So I always knew that I was going to come back. And truth be told, when I went to hang out my cleats, I had an opportunity to go back to the NFL, but it was at a very crucial point in our growth. And I saw how much, weight my brother was lifting. I thought that it would be a perfect opportunity for me to come back and help him do all the heavy lifting. And it's truly been a blessing. I don't regret a single minute of that part of my life, because I don't like to call it. Everybody asks me, how was it, being an NFL player? And to me, it's not real life. It's like you live this dream, and yeah, you get paid well, but really life starts after you're done playing, because while you're playing, it's all kind of like a movie. So
Joaquin's being modest and leaving a couple of things out. And as his older brother, I will sing his praises. Number one, Joaquin was recruited by all the Ivy League schools. Um, Not one didn't visit our home. They don't give athletic scholarships, but they do give academic assistance or grants or that kind of thing. And Joaquin was an incredible student. I don't think Joaquin had a B during his high school career. Everything was A's and A pluses, and everything was advanced courses. So bright guy that got recruited. The Harvard coach came over the house at least 3 times, loved Cuban food. That's when he got introduced to it by my mom and all that. And then Joaquin also, during his tenure at the University of Miami, actually won what they call the academic Heisman, which is the Dratty Award. And his photographs in the College Football Hall of Fame currently as one of the recipients of that award, which include people like Peyton Manning. That's the top scholar athlete in football in college. So that's a lot to be proud of. And he ended it on his own terms. Like he said, he could have kept playing and basically chose the family business instead of continuing to go out there and get beat up for a living. And we're happy he did.
Absolutely. That is so incredible. And I'm sure you both are so happy you did. That's so great to hear. So tell us a little bit more about, we hear you had a partnership with TRP and Penske.
Yeah. In 2011, we got approached by Transportation Resource Partners, which was formerly Penske Capital Partners. And, they made us that proverbial offer we couldn't refuse, kind of like in the movie The Godfather. No, yeah, it was a great partnership with them. That lasted for close to 11 years. In 2022, they decided that they couldn't hold the investment any longer because usually private equities only want to hold investments for about 5 or 6 years, and they were on year 11 with us. So we were able to make a deal with them that was very beneficial on both sides, and we were able to take full ownership of Tire Group International in November of 2022 again, which is something that I really didn't think about when we first, sold the majority of the company in 2011, but something that I'm extremely grateful for now, and being back full time with this company that we birthed from nothing in 1992. So it's been an incredible ride to be back in the captain's chair, having my brother by my side, and me by his side, because me and my brother, like he said before, are on the same wavelength 99.9% of the time, and we could finish each other's sentences even though we're about 11 years apart. So what's that? He's so you finish my sentence. No, very, very happy to be back. Back with, again, not only in the company, but with the group of people that are still here. I mean, that's one of the things about our company. We are truly a family-owned business. Even while Penske owned the majority of this company, that feel, that love never left this building. And I think it got re-energized in November of 2022 when we took back full ownership. The average tenure here in just the administrative part, I believe, is something like on average 12 and a half, 13 years. We have at least 15 people or more, 20 people that have been here over 20 years, and there's at least 6 or 7 that have been here over 25 years. So the family atmosphere here is strong, and that's one of the reasons that we decided that we wanted to once again own 100% of this company.
Yeah, the one thing I would add is, one of the things that is so appealing about Tire Group, and one of the things that made me want to, really kind of do this, besides it's just a family business, was the culture that Tony started here and developed. And I think that there's some key kind of like, just tells you a little bit about who we are as business owners, family men, and just really, business people as a whole, which is there are no employees at Tire Group. Everybody is considered a team member. Nobody works for us. We all work together. We're nobody's boss. We're everybody's colleague. And the one thing is that we drive that message home no matter where we are and how annoying it may seem, because we may be in a meeting and our CFO is talking about employee retention program, and Tony stops and he goes, team member retention program. And that is literally just driving that message home for the last 33 years. And I think it's important, and people recognize that. I think that, it just tells you a little bit about kind of like our own humble beginnings. And I'm the first one that, in the stages that we are in our lives, I celebrate more my team's victories and our individual sales reps, whether it's be the domestic guy or our purchasing team's individual victories, uh, because I want to see those guys succeed. I want to see those people get ahead, and I want to see those. So, and because it kind of is kind of like replicating our story. So for that, I'm eternally grateful. And I think that's what makes TGI such a special place to work at.
Absolutely. That's so incredible. It's such a great environment to be a part of. And going back a little bit, you mentioned that 2022 was a big year for you and your business. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that or elaborate on?
Yeah, I think it segues into kind of, where we are today as a company. As Tony mentioned, our partnership with TRP and Penske really kind of was the catalyst of us refocusing our efforts into the US, where now we're known really as a distributor that not only exports, but actually has a presence in the US. Because for the large majority of TGI's life, we were pretty much viewed as an exporter, and deservedly so. About 75% of our business back in the day was export. Today, that's flipped. About 75% of our business is in the US and 25% is export. So, in terms of us coming back in 2022, I think it just kind of uh, refocused us in terms of where that growth was going to come from and how solid that growth or that footing would be. And I think anybody that would, see this interview or has been in the tire business long enough understands the perils of distributing a brand that you don't own, or distributing a brand that maybe you're buying from a source that maybe you can't trust. And that is the fact that you start distributing that tire, you start opening markets, you start putting effort, resources, money behind that brand. And after the honeymoon phase is over, whether it's 6 months, 9 months, a year, that manufacturer, that distributor comes back and wants more. And when you can't give them that more, then all of a sudden you find tires entering your markets through different avenues. And that's where all of a sudden there's price degradation, margin degradation, and you're back to square one. And it's like this vicious cycle that ourselves lived through it. And we said, well, how can we be better? How can we avoid those pitfalls ourselves? And how can we be a better partner to our dealers? And that's where really the emphasis, which had been growing, on our private label products such as Cosmo, Astro, and Duramos, uh, really took major focus and major hold in really in our capital investments into those brands and our way of going to market. Really, putting an emphasis in a family first business, really targeting the independent tire dealers, and showing them who we are in terms of having the patience to develop the markets correctly, knowing that we're going to be here no matter if they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down months. Hey, we're here. If we pick you or you pick us, and we see it's a right fit, we have the patience to endure and give you all of the tools that you need, as well as all the resources that you could put to be successful in your markets. And we're starting to see the benefit of that. So
Awesome.
Well said.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both so much for joining me today, and we'll catch you next time.
thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us.